Okay, we're live. What's up, Brett?
Hello. We
Ev
started in the small screen today. We started in the small, narrow
Yeah,
screen.
we
I
were
like
talking earlier before we came on. I mean, before we went live, we were in the small. Each setup has its merits. I do think for some reason that the small screen looks more sophisticated, but it's not close enough to our faces. Like
Yeah,
I think people like that more personal and
yeah.
personalized engagement. So hello everybody. Thank you for joining us and happy December. So we're now in the month of Christmas and Hanukkah and and all kinds of stuff. So anyway, hello everybody, and I want to say hi to my mods. I've got AJ, Vanessa, and perhaps Rebel Bird. I don't know if Rebel Bird. Yeah, there's Rebel Bird. Hello, and I don't know if Laura's here or not, but hello, Laura, as well if you come on. And thanks to them. So I was telling you, Brett, I don't really have an agenda for tonight. Sometimes I come in here and I'm
Yeah.
ready to go on certain things, and like Pearl Davis last week.
Oh, I like it when you have because I spend all day planning for our show. So I like it when I don't have to plan anything for the nighttime stream. It's
Well,
much
and
better that way.
these are great because you don't have to plan, and I just
Mm.
completely, like, abdicate all of my planning responsibilities, and so we just show up, and I'm like, "What's on the Daily Mail tonight?"
See, I never use the Daily Mail. I have a very hard
Really?
time. Yeah, no, I mean, I
Just
know
as
that
a
it gets
basic
used a
resource to know what people are talking about that day? No?
I don't like the layout. I mean, I'll use it if somebody sends me a Daily Mail article, but I hate the layout of the Daily Mail website more than anything. I hate trying to navigate the small, tiny article headlines and all this stuff. 90% of it is like so and so looked sexy in this outfit. And I'm like, I don't want to read that. I don't want to read that.
Yeah, they do have
So it's,
a lot of crap
yeah.
in there too.
So it's like I have a hard time scrolling through all of the Daily Mail, but obviously if the articles get sent to me,
What
that's
do you
good.
like?
But
Do you have a resource that you go
oh,
to every day?
I have an enormous I have about 25 websites and then
Give
more.
me, like, 2. I'm gonna be like when Katie Couric asked, Sarah Palin to
Yeah.
name a newspaper, and she couldn't even name one. I'm not gonna do
I'll
that, but
I'll do you one better. I'll do you one better. So if I'm looking for comic book related stuff, I'm using Cosmic Book News, Bounding into Comics, or Bleeding Fool. If I'm looking for industry news for Hollywood, you're looking at Variety, Deadline, or The Hollywood Reporter. If you're looking for more biased but sensationalized headlines that lean a specific direction, you're looking at Breitbart, Fox, or what is another? Or Newsweek is also a good one. Newsweek has a great opinion section, even if their regular articles tend to be kind of biased. If you're looking for non-industry but culture related news, you're looking at Indy 100, Dexerto, or a couple of others like that. And then there's a ton of others that I use to most of my morning every day is like wake up, rub the crust out of my eyes, make myself look halfway presentable, and then just like plant myself in front of a computer and start reading and looking for what we're going to talk about today. And that is, of course, if none of those things have appeared on Twitter, which is where a lot of this stuff ends up being funneled to us, from. You find so much. I didn't even want to have a Twitter. I had a Twitter years ago. It was probably the most positive Twitter in the entire world. It was nothing about me but me talking about how much I loved movies and television. And I
Aw.
deleted it because I just didn't feel like dealing with Twitter. But then I kind of realized, about half a year into doing the show, that it was like, first of all, you're behind the eight ball if you don't have access to that information right away. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, I was forced to like put on the hazmat suit and dive into Twitter so that I could have access to information faster.
Yeah, I understand that concession. I wasn't gonna get on, Instagram or even TikTok, and
Yeah.
TikTok, I don't get much, like, in the way of learning from TikTok, but I'm trying to break it through there with some videos. Is this one of yours? I wanted to ask you, this Super 23 person says,
Not
"Let's hate on
me.
someone tonight." No, it just kinda
That's not
sounds
me.
like one of
Hey,
it
my
sounds like one of
my
your people.
what? My people do
Your
not
people have very
hate.
bold personalities, that's what
Yes,
I meant.
but they do not hate indiscriminately. That's not like them.
Well, we probably, there we did I did put several people on the thumbnail that that are definitely easy to hate on. And actually, that thumbnail that wasn't really intentional. It was just mainly, oh, I'm really in a hurry, and so let's put something up with my face
Yeah.
and Brett's on it. But there was Amber Heard on that thumbnail, and there was also Jada Pinkett Smith. I think the news has been in the Jada department. It's been pretty actually chill the last couple of weeks or whatever. Now,
Yeah.
Amber can you catch me up a little bit? Are you paying attention about the Aquaman thing? Because I'm totally
All
not.
all I know is that the movie is projecting really, really low. And
What does
the
that
Mar
mean, projecting? I'm sorry. What is
So the box office projections for how it's going to do in its opening weekend are very, very low right now. And one of the great things that they have going for them with all of the reshoots they've done with that movie, meaning that they've removed about as much of her as they can from the film. She's not in the trailers at all. They can really blame her either way. Meaning that if the movie does really, really well, they can be like, well, it's because we mostly removed Amber Heard, and so people were willing to see it. But if it does really, really badly, all they have to say is like, look, Amber Heard was all this bad publicity. She's going to be
Yeah.
awful for the movie. So it's kind of funny with that because yeah, the movie is it comes out, I believe, either next or no, it comes out right before Christmas, right? So
Mhm.
it's both this and the Marvels are a battle of these two movies that both made $1 billion when their originals came out.
Whoa.
The Aquaman made $1 billion in 2018, and Captain Marvel made $1 billion in 2019. Now both of them have their sequels come out, and the Marvels is leaving the box office as the worst performing Marvel movie of all time.
Seriously?
Yep. So it
I mean,
went
I
from
haven't seen
being
it. I'm just like, I didn't realize things. I've been seeing you and a bunch of other people talking because I'm totally out of the loop on all of the comic
yeah.
stuff and everything. But I've been seeing a bunch of people online talking about how the Marvels, including Tug, someone mentioned Tug,
Yeah.
including Tug, about how much the Marvels had flopped. And so it's that bad though.
Oh
It's the
yeah.
worst performing. Wow.
So it hasn't even broken 200 million worldwide yet. It's not even going to crack 100 million domestically. I think it's at
It may not
90.
even
It's
recoup its costs, huh? Or
no, it's going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's made about $80 million here in the US. Its total box office right now is $197 million globally. But the problem is the movie cost $220 million to make, and you split half of those profits with the studios. So
mm,
it if it costs if it ended its box office right now at, let's round up and say $200 million, they're taking home maybe 100 million of that because they have to split the rest of it with the with the theaters, right? And none of
okay.
that is including the cost of production, marketing, advertising on the internet, ads, all of those things. Usually when you do that, you take the budget for a film and you times it by 1.5, and that gives you your marketing budget for the film. So the
Okay.
budget on this film is well over $300 million, all in. More than that, probably by quite a bit. And you're going to lose a crap ton of money. And people are in Aquaman is in even worse place now because of how long that movie's been delayed to come out, and nobody really has any interest in seeing it because it's the last film, and people who watch this stuff will understand what I'm saying, that the guy who made who was the backbone of the previous era at DC, Zack Snyder, who did Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, Justice League, and then he did the Snyder cut, but he was the main director for the
I've heard
original
of him.
Justice League before Joss Whedon got involved. His casting, all of these people that were involved are essentially on their way out. So this last straggler movie that no one's going to feel any desire to need to go see because it won't connect to
Mhm.
anything after that. Because director James Gunn, who did Guardians of the Galaxy and so many other things, he's coming in. He's doing a Superman movie in 2025. So there's really no incentive for people to go and see this movie.
Mhm.
And just all of these movies, hundreds of millions of dollars spent, hundreds of millions of dollars lost. Disney's a big topic right now. Not just HBO, not just Warner Brothers, but Disney is probably the biggest topic right now because movies like the Marvels, movies like Wish have these exorbitant budgets and are losing them
Is it necessary?
hundreds of millions.
Is it necessary? Well, I know nothing is necessary, but does it make sense that some of these superhero or comic movies cost as much as they do? Like, is that
Yes.
special effects? Is that okay? Is
Yeah.
that because I'm trying to figure out why it's so expensive?
Unfortunately, it is. I my one of the things I've been saying since 2016 is they need to pare down the budgets on these movies, work with more practical effects, and find a way to tell stories that will cost less, which at their heart tend to actually be more character driven. When you're forced by budget to focus on the characters rather than the
Mhm.
large set pieces, you'll tend to get a better story anyways. At least that's my
Mhm.
take on these things. So if you look this year, of the 20 movies, now this was a month ago or so when I looked this up, of the top 20 movies of the year at the box office, 10 of them lost money. So even though they were in the top 20 earners of the
Whoa.
of the
Yeah.
films that came out this year, they still lost their studios money. And that's because the budgets on these movies are so astronomically high.
Wow.
There's no way for the studio to recoup their losses in an age where going to the movies costs an arm and a leg. People can barely afford groceries. It costs a lot. It takes a lot to get people to want to go out to the theaters. They did it for Barbie. The women showed up to go and see Barbie. The
Mhm.
the Nolan Bros showed up for
And
Oppenheimer,
Nolan Bros.
right? The Nolan Bros showed up for Oppenheimer. James Gunn, with his strong credibility, brought people out for Guardians of the Galaxy. But the thing is, Oppenheimer and Barbie only cost $100 million to make.
Mhm.
And Oppenheimer made $950 million. Barbie made over $1 billion. So they made a crap ton of money because
Mhm.
they cut down on the budget, but still drew large people, large
Yeah, they had
audiences
they
to
had
the theaters.
interesting stories. They were not, formulaic.
Yeah.
No matter I know people who feel ambivalent about both movies for different reasons. But they had interesting stories, they had compelling scripts, they felt organic. They felt
Yeah.
like they came from some kind of an artistic inspiration as opposed to I don't know. I don't see enough superhero comic movies anymore to say, but it seems like they've gotten isn't that one of the main complaints that they've gotten so formulaic and then also they've gotten really woke? Is that basically the
I would say that very few of these movies, it's not that they're woke, they're just bad. Like they're like most of them, they're just bad.
Mm,
Like I'm trying to think of the movies that I would have categorized as like I see more of that issue, and as much as I hate that word, seems to be more of an issue for television than movies. When you get to these big budget movies, it's there a little bit, but the bigger issue is they're just not good. They're
mm,
just bad, right? Like
mhm.
I didn't even hate most of the ones that like I didn't hate The Flash, but I would never watch it again. I think I gave
Okay.
it a 7. That was probably too high. But like there's just in a world where it costs so much to go to the movies, it is we need to move past the idea that it's whether it's woke or not and just focus on whether the movie is good or not, because that definitely, like, that word is so amorphous and so impossible for people to
Right,
define
right.
anyway. I
Yeah.
have I have a running list of
It's
examples.
overstayed its welcome.
Yeah.
It's time.
I have a running list of examples of things in media that I would consider strong examples of that word. The best example would be, have you ever well a great way to look at it is, have you ever seen the Saturday Night Live skit Levi Wokes?
No, but I should check
Okay,
it
so
out.
it's a mock ad with Jake Gyllenhaal, and or no, not Jake
It's
Gyllenhaal,
called what?
Ryan
Levi what?
Ryan Gosling. I'm sorry, Ryan Gosling.
Wait, but
It's
what's it
called
called?
Levi Wokes. So it's Levi jeans, but they're and it's genderless, style neutral, gender non-conforming denim, and it's
Okay.
everything that we make
Oh, I
fun of
see.
now. But Hollywood was making fun of it, like SNL made fun of it back in 2017. Other
Uh-huh.
examples of so for that ad, it's that, but taken seriously. The
Mhm.
other examples that I would give are when they made Anne Boleyn black in a television series. The fact that they
Mhm.
made who was it? Isaac Newton in the new Doctor Who. He's
Mhm.
Indian. There's the new Skittles ad about queer joy. What does that have to do with candy? Those
I
are
would find that insulting
Yeah,
actually as a
those are strong examples of it,
gay person.
but, like, when it comes to using that word for a definition, I'm not a huge fan of it. I just tend to be one of those things where it's like, when you see it, you know what it is,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
using it to describe it to the problem with that is that when you use that and you try to describe it to somebody else, they might see it differently, so it doesn't really
Right.
work.
Yeah, I really struggle. in videos where that idea where and if you've lost track, we're talking about woke, the term woke right
Yep.
now. I really struggle with that idea in my videos when I want to express it of how else to say it because even though I agree with you and I hate the term and I really want to get away from using it, there's still I haven't found another shorthand where people yeah, you say they have different ideas, but people also generally kind of know what you're saying. So I guess give me we talked about this I think a week or two ago. Give me like how you would express then that idea. Like when you look at a film where they've made Anne Boleyn black, like how would you describe what's going on there?
I can't. Like, it is well, no, this is I don't fall into the trap, right? Because they ask people to define it, and they don't know how to define it. All it is you know it when you see it, right? I'm not because the second I give you any definition,
Yeah.
I know Tim has his own definition of
What
it,
is do you know
but
Tim's? What's his
I
definition?
can't, I
I'll have
don't
to look
remember
it
it off
up.
the top of my head. The problem is that it is instinctive to you. You'll know it when you see it. And if anybody else gives you a definition, look, if you go, anybody here right now with a Twitter profile or an X profile, go on right now and say, what does it mean to be woke? And you'll get 25 different definitions of it. I guess it's more important. It's not about what it means to other people. What does it mean to you? Then the issue is you have to then be able to critique it in a way that everyone can understand. Right.
Mhm.
So I don't even necessarily consider all like do you know who Tyrone Magnus is? He's a YouTuber. He's
No.
fantastic. He's had a bit he said a long time ago where he said woke doesn't necessarily mean bad. You can do it well. It's not easy, but it can be done well. There are elements of it in movies like The Creator, which I saw
Mhm.
and I loved.
Mhm.
But the difference is it's a matter of, does the storytelling come first? Right?
Well, you can overlook, or I personally can overlook a lot of messaging that makes me, even at times cringe if it's good art. I'll give you an example,
Yeah.
okay? Um, there is, I think it was HBO, maybe I think it's on Netflix now too. There was an HBO series a couple of years ago about James Comey and the different controversies that came up with him. You know, with Hillary Clinton and the emails, and then also
Yeah.
with Bush, with Trump. And anyway, starring Jeff Daniels, and there were some other big actors in it. And I really I knew that I was not going to like the messaging of the film, the political messaging and the slant that they were going to have, and it's true that generally I didn't. But you know what? I thought that the dialogue was great. I thought the performances were compelling. I thought that I really got immersed in it so that even as I'm watching it and I'm thinking, well, I don't agree with this or that or the messaging here, and I think it's stupid how they're depicting this, but at the same time, it was very absorbing. And I think if art can I think you're exactly right to suggest that if art, if entertainment can clear that bar of giving us good storytelling, people really don't get hung up, won't get hung up as much on the whatever political games people they're trying to play in these movies, you know?
Okay, so people were pushing the idea that Oppenheimer was woke because it had some pro or neutral communist messaging, right? Because of Florence Pugh's character and the fact that that Oppenheimer himself was sympathetic to communist regimes, right? Or was
Mhm,
sympathetic to the communist movement, right?
mhm.
And I was
Right,
like, look, the storytelling came first, right? He
right.
did not put that message above the storytelling. It's another great example. If you really want the easiest way to find it, is not with new media. It's when they bring an old show back and they ruin it. So, in my opinion, they ruined in the first 10 to 15 minutes of the remake, or I'm sorry, of the continuation of Justified City Primeval, because they made race an important part of the discussion, and pointing out that Raylan Givens is white in the first 10 minutes of this series, and it didn't need to be there. There was
Yeah, when it feels, like, really obvious and out of
yeah,
place and not organic to the story, or just like you arbitrarily, make a character who's black
yeah.
for yeah,
Yeah. Well,
yeah, yeah.
so one of my favorite parts about the show, Justified is how they did not give white supremacists or Nazis even the slightest bit of credibility. There's a scene in the pilot where they talk about how Boyd Crowder went to prison and he moved on to the militia movement in the white supremacist bullshit, and that's all of the attention they give it, right? For the rest of the show, you see Confederate flags in the background of of characters that have three dimensions rather than being caricatures of of what you imagine a white supremacist or somebody from the deep south would be. There's deep character development with these characters, with these individuals, and the problem is nowadays the writing has been so bogged down by current year speak that you have to hear buzzwords that you're going to hear on CNN or in news articles.
Yeah.
My issue is with the writing. So I want writing to feel evergreen. I do not
Mhm.
want to hear, I am so sick of hearing the phrase mental health when people talk. I'm so
Yeah.
freaking
Yeah.
sick of the word mental health. I'm so sick of hearing the word narcissist in these television shows and these
I'm
movies.
probably guilty of that.
They need to write. They need to write as if somebody with a time machine is watching this product. They need to get all of these people who are writing for these television shows should be forced to get off the internet for at least 6 weeks before they start writing dialogue. You can do all of the scene building, all that stuff, but if you're going to write interactions with characters, you cannot have everyone talk as if they are looking at their phone all the time, because most of the characters that are interesting and having things, stories being told about them, no cop, no firefighter, no doctor is spending all day on Twitter or on Reddit, so to the point where they would talk like they're on. And that is
Mhm.
actually one of the critiques I have of Lady Ballers, which we will end up talking about, is that certain scenes felt like they abandoned the character's personality in
Mm.
favor of dialogue that felt like it was pulled off of what ChatGPT would analyze as how people see this movement, right?
Mhm.
So the reason why Christopher Nolan characters feel robust is probably because he doesn't spend all day on Twitter.
It's very true, it's very true, and it's interesting you mentioned how you were so tired of hearing buzzwords,
Mhm.
and I think that's one of the things that really ruined. Look, I've never been a big Sex and the City fan, but I had some appreciation. I've seen the 1st season, I've seen all the
I've
movies.
never seen it.
I had some appreciation for it, even though it was not one of my favorites, and I had a girlfriend, my best friend, who was really into it, when we were younger, and so anyway, I had a sort of nostalgic affection for it. Here's the thing, though, they ruined, they had these 2 new seasons that have come out the past couple of years, and I couldn't get through even the first one. I got about 3 episodes in, but it's so cringe because they keep using all of these buzzwords, and they keep
Yeah.
bringing in a very artificial, inorganic way, race and transgenderism and this and that, and I think that it's when it's not art, when it's not organic to the story, it really is hard to take.
It's not even that it's not art, it's just bad
Bad
art
art.
that's bogged down by modern day sensibilities. In a way, you almost feel bad for the writers because they're probably like, if I tried to write a script today, I would
Mhm.
probably have a very, very difficult time doing it, not letting the modern day of it all, not letting the modernity of it all infect what I was writing. But characters should feel individualistic and unique, not an amalgamation of all the things we read and say online. Because one fact
Right.
is true, and I think people don't realize this: you do not talk the same on Twitter as you do in real life. A lot of people would do better to remember that. Like, look, the way that people talk in this gotcha, cutesy pie way online is not how people actually interact in the real world,
Right.
right?
Right.
Okay, so here's a good example. So I've been watching, I find there's a couple of shows that I really, really like that were based off movies that were way better than they had any right to be. And that was the Lethal Weapon TV show with Damon Wayans and Clayne Crawford, and the Limitless TV show with Jennifer Carpenter. So there's a line in the first season of the Lethal Weapon show, which by the way has like tangentially any connection whatsoever to the actual movies. It's
Really?
basically like
None?
it's bare, but I love it. I love it personally. But there's a scene in the first in episode 4, where basically Damon Wayne, the Murtaugh's son, gets pulled over with another young man by a police officer, and then he calls Riggs to get him out of trouble. And he basically points out, he says, look, my son got pulled, 2 black kids got pulled over in an $80,000 vehicle by a cop. Do you know how bad that could have gone? First of all, I have issues thinking that the cop is going to think that lowly of the police department, that he assumes that just because, even though he is black, I don't know if I would buy that a police officer would take that narrative, right? So that felt very Hollywood, but he doesn't use the way he phrases it, doesn't get heavy-handed or use a bunch of buzzwords. He uses the lingo an officer probably would have actually used in that scene.
Right,
So
I see what you're saying.
what could have gone unbelievably bad very, very quickly. It's barely in there, and the episode
it's subtle.
It's subtle.
It's not like racism, police racism.
That
George
is
Floyd.
That is what would be called a woke talking point, right? But it's not done poorly. Therefore, and I am one of the first people, look, when they start using the buzzwords, I tune out. I will skip the episode so fast. But because they use reasonable language, I'm able to push through, and they don't harp on it, and they don't hang on that moment for too long. So
yeah, no, that's a great point. And I felt that way when I was watching the Scorsese film, Killers of the Flower Moon. And I thought it was a good movie. I didn't think it was amazing, but I thought it was very good and deserving of accolades. But, obviously, a lot of that film is concerned with the plight of Native Americans. And to me, it felt very natural, very organic. And it was like, okay, this is what he's looking at. He's looking at this particular period in the history of our country when there were these horrible things that were done to some of these Native Americans. I'm fine with that. So I very much agree with you. I wanted to get to this super chat. It's been sitting here forever. This is one of yours, right?
Yes.
What's up, Shane? Shane Wilder says, Kurtz and Dasovic, must be Monday night. That's right. It's like Monday Night Football. When I was a little girl growing up, that Hank Williams Jr. song. Are you ready for some football?
Yes. Did they ever change the song, or do they still use that?
I don't know. I don't watch football much anymore. Somebody, and I like to watch it on the internet. Somebody tell us, do they still use that Hank Williams Jr. song? But he says, y'all are getting me through SFX work on a new podcastress video. And Brett, I watched the interviews. You do clean up in a suit. Okay, tell me about both of these things. What's he talking about here?
Podcastress videos is a series of videos that Shane does with Mary in regards to he memes on the show. Shane is a memestress, is a memer for sure. He's not a memestress because he's a guy. She would be a memestress.
Podcastress you're thinking about.
Yes, yeah. He's in me wearing a suit. So we went last week, and we after episode 500 on Tuesday, we flew out to Nashville and went to the premiere of Lady Ballers from the Daily Wire. And after the premiere, we recorded some interviews with some of the stars of the movie, which was a lot of fun.
So since you bring this up, I guess I want to only preface our conversation about Lady Ballers this way. The whole trans issue and all the controversy surrounding that, it's not something that I hardly ever get into on my channel because, and I have very complicated feelings about it and so forth. But I really want you to feel free to talk about whatever. I feel like sometimes when we do this show, you feel like you have to kind of apologize for getting too political. And I think people just understand that you have your perspectives, I have mine, and so whatever. But I really am interested. I saw that both you and Mary were on the red carpet, right, for this movie. You were interviewing some big shots, honestly. I saw Shapiro, obviously, Ben Shapiro and Mary. But who did you talk to?
So I talked to I would have to look. So I talked to the Coen brothers, the Crane brothers, the guys who do Crane & Co., and a couple other people, and then we interviewed a couple of people together. The best thing about doing this, first of all, is the height difference between us and everyone there. It's hilarious how much taller.
Because it's about basket.
It's a basketball movie. So I actually point out with one of them, I was like, look, who would believe that you are a basketball player? And I'm like staring up at him. He's like a foot and a half taller than me.
What is
But
the
the
premise for our audience members
okay,
who don't know,
so
and for me, what is the premise of this movie? It's, and by the way, people wonder what's the significance, sorry, what's the
yeah,
significance of this? It's one of the new films that's been produced by the Daily Wire, which is
yeah.
a conservative outlet, and it's associated with Ben Shapiro, or he runs it or whatever. I don't remember. But anyway, so they've been doing movies, putting out movies. And so tell us what the
Yeah.
plot is of this.
So in the movie, Coach Rob, which is played by Jeremy Boring himself, the man who runs the Daily Wire, he's down and out on his luck after coaching 3 state championships, and he has an idea after his daughter tries to explain to him all of the insane rules around gender ideology today. Because if you're out of the loop as an adult, you would certainly learn that stuff from your kids these days, unfortunately.
Hmm.
He has the idea to take his old winning high school basketball team, have them dress up and pretend to be girls so that they can win a spot at the global games.
For
And
women, like,
no, yeah, they compete in the women's division because they're said if you dress up like
right,
a girl, you're a girl, right? And
right.
it is very dodgeball esque in its delivery. And then the movie is essentially them going through this entire premise, going through the 4 games they have to play to qualify, and you really go on a journey with the coach as he essentially figures out that what he's doing is wrong.
So is it seems to me, not having seen it, it seems to me that it's probably a comical, but a critique on this, on people who allow biological males to compete in women's sports, and the
Yeah.
basic sort of unfairness and absurdity of that, which is something that I do very much have a problem with, right?
One of the strongest parts about this movie is it does unapologetically become willing to criticize the absurd, which is what Hollywood is really not, willing to
Mhm.
do these days. They're
Right.
not willing to openly criticize what is clearly and obviously absurd. And what's going on, the people critiquing the movie are not people that have seen the movie. They're people that have a problem with the premise as a whole, calling it, it's transphobic to make a
Anti-trans.
movie like this. It's
Yeah.
anti-trans. I would argue that the movie ends up having quite a sweet message at the end of it, which is what really pulled it together to me. Um, uh, I had some issues with the dialogue. I felt like there was some clunky dialogue in the movie. Like I said, that felt like it was written more by
Mhm.
the internet rather than it was for particular characters. That would
Right.
have been my biggest critique, other than the fact that really a lot of these some of these they're just not actors, right? So like for Jeremy Boring, one of the things I think Jeremy Boring does like way better than you would expect someone who doesn't really have much acting experience to be able to do in the role that he does.
Yeah.
And the little girl who plays his daughter, who is an aspiring actress, from what I understand, this is like her first big role. She does a really, really good job of connecting with him in a way that feels legitimate. I would have loved another pass at the script, perhaps, to smooth out some of that clunky dialogue. But
Mhm.
when the movie gets into the message that it really wants to convey, right? When it actually hits the emotional beats, which is an important part of comedies, right? It's not
Right.
usually just comedy start to finish. There has to be a message that connects it. Hell, even the movie Van Wilder has a point in the movie where Van Wilder realizes that he can't keep wasting his life at college, and he has to actually, face his fears and go out into the real world, right? Even the most
Right.
raunchy of comedies have to do this. And when this movie actually connects with its message towards the end, the beginning and the end of the third act, I really think it does it really, really well. I admit that I myself tend to be a pretty easy person to please when it comes to most films. I think people give me a lot of crap when they watch our reviews, because they think I'm too giving, I'm too forgiving when it comes to movies these days. But I don't see that as a bad thing, especially if you know me and you can gauge how you see movies to my to how I see them. That can be your guide. If you're watching our reviews, you can use how you perceive my reviews as a guide as to whether you want to take my advice on this or not, right?
Do you feel like the movie was anti, well, let me put it this way, I think there are
It's
2 sep
anti-woke.
well,
It's
I was gonna say anti-trans, actually, because I feel like there are 2 separate questions here. One is, is it okay for people to be trans, and is that something that we should not be bigoted about, et cetera, et cetera? That's one question. And then another question is it okay for biological males to compete in women's sports? And to me, that's a totally different concern. So
Yeah.
my question to you is, could you see someone who's trans going into lady ballers and feeling, if they don't think that biological males should be in women's sports, feeling okay about the movie, or did it have an anti-trans message as well?
It is it handles the material gently. It's very, very gentle in its delivery, but I do believe that their message in this film is that if you're trans, you have a mental illness and you
It's
should
very clear
seek
on
to
that.
get help for that mental illness. This is what they're saying,
No, I
right?
understand. Yeah,
That
yeah,
so
yeah. That's
so
what I asked you.
their message on here is that it doesn't make you a bad person, but it doesn't mean that you're well and that you should seek help. And even more firmly, they put that the idea of men competing in women's sports is ridiculous. I would label this movie like when people use the term anti woke, like just because you make a movie doesn't that's good. Just because one of these outlets, just because the Daily Wire makes a movie, doesn't mean that the movie is inherently what they would call anti woke. This is very much a movie with a message. So if you're not looking to be preached to about a topic, or at least talk to about a topic, this might not be the movie for you. But for the people that do find a lot of what's going on absurd, do find the lack of willingness by the mainstream to even talk
To
about
be
these issues,
skeptical, or
if
yes, or
to
to
be
talk, yeah.
skeptical, then this is a movie that's worth checking out. But to say that it isn't a movie with a message would be disingenuous, I believe.
Well, no, I mean, and I think that I'm glad that I'm glad that you answered that question, honestly, because I'm not even, I think that people, when it comes to art, I think we should have a range of different opinions being expressed or being given a voice,
Mhm.
especially. And the thing that I've said before about the trans issue is that I have no problem with people dressing as or presenting themselves however they want, and I think that that's totally fine, and I think that we should, as much as possible in a libertarian way, leave other people to live their lives as they will and present themselves as they want. To me, where it becomes complicated and problematic is when then someone is trying to force their
Yeah.
reality on me in some way, or in the case of what's going on in women's sports, that's problematic. I wanted to ask you, while it popped into my mind before we move on to a different topic. You mentioned James Gunn a ways back there,
Mhm.
and I'm curious. I have my own opinions, but I'm curious. How do you feel about what happened to him several years ago with the quote unquote
Oh,
pedo tweets
the
and all of
tweets.
that? Do you think that was unfair? What happened?
Well, what's funniest about that situation is that was a very early example of how Hollywood protects the people that they work with, right? So he got boycotted and then they fired him from Disney, right? He got fired from
He was
Disney for his
fired from at one point from
from
Guardians of the
his tweets.
Galaxy.
Look, I didn't read the tweets. I know that a lot of them was like I was talking to someone recently about, like, did you know that there was a time where like dead baby humor was like a
Right.
thing,
Yeah, no,
right?
I
Like
remember it. We used to make those jokes.
edgy, edgy
And
humor has
pedo
always
jokes.
been a thing.
And
Yeah,
pedo jokes. Yes, yes.
all of these things were part of the culture for a period of time, and people understood, or at least I assumed understood at the time, that jokes were jokes. There's an argument to be made that maybe the same isn't necessarily going to be expected of somebody who's a public figure representing a gazillion-dollar company, that to
Right.
your own detriment you make yourself a target by doing that. And he got
With a really
fired.
wholesome image and all of that
Yeah.
Disney was trying to have.
And but those tweets were what, 10 years old or something at
Yeah.
that time, right?
I thought
But
it was really unfair, the reaction to him, and I thought that it was one instance where I felt like the right was really, I was having a kind of an overreactive moral panic like we often see on the left with like Me Too and stuff like
Mhm.
that. And the thing is that those tweets, when you look at them, it was very clear that he was not in any way promoting some lifestyle of his. They were dumb juvenile tweets among many other tweets that were not themed that way.
Yeah.
And one thing that a lot of people don't know about James Gunn is that he got his start. And you may know this, I don't know, but he got his start. He really cut his teeth with the Trauma Film Group. And the Trauma Film Group is known for being especially not only edgy in their humor, but extremely juvenile. Like you were talking about the dead baby stuff, vulgar, in your face, that sort of
Yeah.
thing. And so I really think that the guy, he got his start doing something very different from the wholesome, Guardians of the Galaxy Disney stuff. And so people then, for people retroactively years later, after culture has changed, society has changed, and also when it's clear he was joking, to be judging him, canceling him for that, I thought that it was wrong. The other thing that I didn't like was that his main antagonist in that, the guy who really got him fired, I think, was a guy named Mike Cernovich. Are you familiar with Cernovich?
I actually really like Cernovich on Twitter.
Yeah, no,
I
Cernovich.
do.
So
He's so
Cernovich had
yeah.
I used to look at his tweets all the time on Twitter. He ended up blocking me, I think maybe because we got into a fight over this. But I found him very entertaining, a lot of the stuff that he would say. But he kept claiming on Twitter that there were 10,000 pedo tweets that James Gunn deleted. And
Yeah.
that narrative really took hold because people were thinking, well, my God, it wasn't just, one or two or five or 20 or whatever, this 10,000. And what Cernovich was actually misrepresenting deliberately was the fact that James Gunn, when he started getting all this shit for a few tweets that people cherry picked, he then decided to just en masse just delete all of his or much of his Twitter, right? So if I
Yeah.
were just to go through and say, I'm going to delete these years, then yeah, it's going to be like 10,000 tweets or whatever. And so Cernovich he can be really, I think, at times deliberately deceptive because he kept saying 10,000 pedo tweets, 10,000 pedo tweets. And I just thought the whole thing was really
Yeah.
silly. And to me, that's a great example of where you can see a moral panic happening
You'll see it from both
historically on
sides.
the right. Yeah.
You see it from both sides. The other thing that was interesting about that is that it really showed you the Hollywood workaround that they have, which was this. So he gets fired from Disney. He
Uh-huh.
immediately gets picked up by Warner Brothers to do the Suicide Squad,
That's right.
which
They didn't really fire him, did
which
they? It was kind of
so
halfway.
and as soon as he does the Suicide Squad, he's immediately hired back by Disney to do Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So,
Yeah, yeah.
they if
All's
you're a
well that ends well, I guess. But I
yeah,
understand what you're saying though. They got around that. And that's one instance when I was glad that they did. And I want to say too, Chris Pratt and some of the other actors, but specifically Chris Pratt, because I think he had the most to lose in terms of being out front there. It would have been very easy for him to have gone along with the castigation of James Gunn because it was Chris Pratt. Chris Pratt, he has a lot of fans more on the right, and because he's real, like, obviously, pro America, pro God, and all of that. And so it would have been real easy for him, since this was coming more from the right, to have gone along with the narrative. But he did speak out for James Gunn in some way,
yeah.
I remember on Twitter.
And I mean, so did Dave Batista. I think Dave
Yes.
Batista said he wouldn't do the movie unless James Gunn was
Wow.
involved in it. And a
Good
lot of
for
those
him.
people, like that was a very tight group of people working together that stood up for each other. I can respect that, even though I think Dave Batista is absolutely annoying. And
Is he?
very much, yeah, he's very annoying, but I can respect someone who has a personal relationship with someone and has loyalty. I think that's something to be admired. So it's a weird world that they live in, right? And
Mhm.
I'm definitely like, look, a guy like James Gunn's always going to find work. He's a gifted writer, he's a gifted director. He's going to continue to get work outside of finding him guilty of a crime, right? Like the stuff was from 10 years ago. I didn't read the actual
It
tweets,
was
but
just dumb jokes. Yeah.
the culture was so different that long ago that it can't be understated how much more blase people were about making jokes online back then, as opposed to the
Yes.
culture now,
Right.
where you are left in a state of fear for making a joke of any sort these days. So
It's true. I don't think it's better. And so the price that you had to pay back then, so I grew up in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s. And to be a youth back then, the price that you had to pay was that you had a lot more freedom, but you had to pay the price of like being offended more, people hurting your feelings more, having edgy things done and said. I mean, this was something that I've been trying to explain to people about Marilyn Manson that comes up a lot is like some people are just so turned off by his image or stupid shit that he wrote in his book when he was trying to promote himself, or interviews that he
Yeah.
would give where he was obviously being like hyperbolic or just flat out bullshitting. And some people, especially younger people, they say, well, why? What's the point of presenting yourself in such a yucky way, a vulgar way or a disturbing way? But it's just there was something edgier in the culture back then, and in a way,
And
and
it
there
was
were
financially incentivized back
yeah,
then.
right, right.
Yeah.
And there were and people and younger people may not get this, but there were advantages to that. Like there were advantages to having more freedom at times, even to within reason, say or do the wrong thing or whatever. And now they're, every time, even though it may appear to people that you and I are just always popping off, but like we have to weigh our words,
Yeah.
as much as possible. So
I'm
or
infinitely
not.
better spoken when I'm not live, and I'm much better at typing out my thoughts for one. Like I write better than I speak for the most part, and I speak better off air than I do on air because I'm constantly adjusting what I'm saying in a certain way.
Well, and the thing that I think is unfortunate about the greater restrictedness that we have now is that it really does stifle creativity because really for people to be fully creative, they have to sort of be able to be in a state of like flow. And with flow, you're kind of like going where the mind leads you. And
Yeah.
back when people had more freedom to kind of get out there and maybe say or express inappropriate things or make mistakes or what have you, there was also then you could also explore more. I posted several days ago about a Clint Eastwood movie. It's on Instagram. You might have seen it. An old Clint Eastwood movie called Geiger Dawn or Iger Dawn or whatever.
Okay.
It was part like it was they were trying to do like a James Bond Clint Eastwood mountain climbing movie. And so it was Eastwood playing kind of a James Bond role. Anyway, long story short, Eastwood was really into edgy. I've seen a number of his movies from the 70s, and he was into at times really edgy, funny dialogue, and at times dialogue that now would be considered homophobic or
Yeah.
misogynist or whatever. But back then, it was just, it was just different sensibilities or whatever. And the thing was, the movie was really very funny, but funny in a sense of like, well, they couldn't get away with trying that now, and I wonder, and I think a lot of comics have expressed this. I wonder how much creativity we are squelching. Yeah, we're able to keep some of the bad stuff out that's maybe going too far or whatever, but how much creativity are we squelching in this highly sanitized creative environment?
I think a big problem with that is now is the consolidation of media. It's all owned by so few companies
Mm,
these days that it's like Tyler Fisher. We had Tyler Fisher on the show. He's in the movie. He's in Lady Ballers. He was on the show on Friday and talked about being offered a Netflix special, but the problem was they said you can't make COVID jokes, right? And
mhm,
he's like, look, if you're gonna do comedy, you have to. There can be no off limits, and really the place to see that now is
mm,
on the internet. Like if you want to see the actual comedy that's without filter, you go and you watch skits online, right? So I
mhm.
see skits on Instagram all the time that would never be allowed on other platforms that are absolutely hilarious that
That's
make me laugh.
great. Well, that's
But
great. I'm glad to
it was
hear it.
1970s this was?
Yeah, 1970s, and, thanks, AJ, for the name, the Iger Sanction, and you see this in other Clint Eastwood
It's a
movies,
great cover.
the one where he's mountain climbing or this
No,
one?
the this one, I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. Eastwood was, he was a hot man back then, and I hope that he sticks around with us for a while yet. Let me tell you something that has been sad for me. You can tell me if you feel this way. It has been sad for me to see movie stars that I really that I really do care about, or whose movies I really am in love with. It's sad to see them finally getting old, because I know that people have always died, and we've been
Yeah.
losing, big stars every year or what have you. But it seems like we're finally getting to the point where some of these people that I love watching, and Eastwood is one of them, that I saw the other day he's turned 93, and the guy could live to 103 or 13, the way that he's still getting on and everything and producing. But I saw that, and then I saw Shirley MacLaine, and she's very old now and looking frail and whatever. Of
Yeah.
course, the Daily Mail doesn't help, because one of the weaknesses of the Daily Mail, and one of the many problems with the Daily Mail, is that they love, and some of you know this, they love to publish these stories about aging celebrities, and they love to find like the worst possible photos,
Yeah.
current photos of a celebrity where they look absolutely just like the crypt keeper or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's sad. And so you see those on the Daily Mail, and then also the Daily Mail just loves to monitor women, particularly women, but also Jonah Hill at times, but monitor the weight gains of celebs. And so, like Bridget Fonda, I feel sorry for her that her husband has been in the news so much, Danny Elfman, with these Me Too lawsuits, simply
I didn't know
because
she was married to Danny
she's
Elfman.
married. Yeah, so there's some a tidbit for you, some new info. But yeah, so
Yeah.
she's been married to Bridget Fonda has been married to Danny Elfman for a long time. They have kids together and everything. And of course, some of you probably have read this. He's the subject of a number of Me Too lawsuits, and I don't know, I haven't looked into them or what have you, but it's about stuff that happened years and years ago, or is alleged to. And so anyway, but Bridget Fonda, I feel sorry for her because she gets all of this negative attention for her weight gain. And yes, she does look completely different than how she looked when she did Jackie Brown and some of those movies. But the woman has been through a lot. Apparently, she was in a car wreck that was really
Yeah.
debilitating and stuff. So anyway, I think that is the ugliest, to me, that is the ugliest side of tabloid culture, is that it does put this stuff in front of us that it's just not healthy.
Maybe when they make a movie about the Danny Elfman Me Too scandals, he will score the movie about his own story. That'd be good.
Oh
Or,
man.
or think about the lady from the original Top Gun that they recast in the sequel. Or they didn't recast her, but they brought in Jennifer
Oh,
Connelly's
Kelly
character.
McGillis, is
Yeah.
that who you're talking about?
Yeah,
Yes, so
so
Kelly
so
McGillis,
because she wasn't like, let's face it, they
she looks very different.
you wouldn't put her on screen because you can't have Tom Cruise look that good for his age and have her look that normal for her age.
And I think that's fine, right? Like that's
Yeah.
to me that's a I don't think that everybody is entitled to be on the big screen, and I think that it makes sense that people want to watch attractive people.
Yep.
Look, not always, but in general, we find more attractive movie stars, we find them more compelling, unless they're like doing like character work or whatever. And so to me, and what you're saying is exactly right. In the real world, a man who really looks like how Tom Cruise looks, he would probably not be interested in a woman who looks like Kelly McGillis.
Mm.
I'm fine with that. To me, it only gets and free press, they can do whatever they want, but to me it just gets gross when you've got the Daily Mail and they've got these side by sides, and they're like Bridget Fonda on her way
Yeah.
to the grocery store, and then you're next to her looking like really skinny and stuff. It's just
I so that my favorite was, okay, so they recently announced the movie they're making about Donald Trump. It's called The Apprentice.
I didn't know they
It's
were.
his younger years. Okay, so
Okay.
I almost said casted. They cast Sebastian Stan as
Okay, I remember him
young
from
Donald Trump.
the Pam and Tommy Lee show. Yeah.
Yes, so he also plays Bucky in Marvel. So they have, first of all, Bucky is a Russian asset in the Marvel movies. That's the best part of that. So, but also, yes, now the same guy who played Tommy Lee is going to play Donald Trump. But then the way that you could judge the outlet is by what photo they used of Trump next to the photo of Sebastian Stan.
Mhm.
So the more fair outlets put a young photo of Trump because it's going to be about young
Young
Donald
Trump.
Trump. The
Okay.
meaner outlets find the most like haggard, awful photo of him. The yellow is just caked on as if he's got Cheeto dust all over his face. The orange is like caked on like there's Cheeto dust on his face. He looks tired. It's great. Like, but the thing is
Yeah,
like the problem with knowing
predictable.
that stuff and paying attention to that stuff is like once you see it, you can't
No,
unsee
it's
it,
very, yeah, it's
and
and
it
it's very
makes
predictable.
it makes it very hard to consume. Like, one of the worst things that's always happened, and I always talk about this, I wish in a lot of ways that I could just what they ostensibly call the red pill.
Mhm.
I wish I could just vomit that up and go back to being completely oblivious to the
You're
way that
like the guy in
there
The
were.
Matrix who was eating
Yeah,
the steak, and he
I
wants
would
to go back in because he says the steak tastes better than the shit that we're eating in the real world. Yeah.
I would go back.
Yeah.
I would take the blue pill. I say the hell with it. I don't need the real world.
Well, it gets back to that age-old question that my friends and I, and I'm sure tons of you would bandy about, in our youth or in a college, outside college classes or whatever. Is it better to be aware, self-aware, aware, but also burdened with that awareness, or would it be better to be dumb and happier? I mean,
Yeah. I wonder sometimes. I wonder sometimes.
that is an interesting question. So what we're gonna do right now. Oh, Nate the lawyer, hello. I was gonna do a bit of a transition, but have you watched Nate the lawyer's stuff, Brett?
I've seen some of his stuff. Yep.
Nate the lawyer, one of the things that I love about Nate the lawyer, and thank you for saying this is a great talk. One of the things I love about Nate the lawyer is that he took on Christopher Boozy. And I don't know if you know or not, Brett, but Christopher Boozy is really disliked among Johnny Depp fans and also among Meghan Markle haters. And so,
Those are such like it's so funny because like Meghan Markle is one of those topics where it's like it comes up, right? It comes up because she's like she'll always be Rachel Zane from Suits to me, and it's
oh, were
like
you watching her back then?
oh yeah,
Okay.
I love look, she got the double whammy of get not just playing Rachel Zane, which will make any man fall in love with a woman wearing a pencil skirt, but also she got to have Wendell Pierce as her dad, and Wendell Pierce is one of my favorite actors of all time. He's from The Wire.
Okay.
Which
Okay. It's
there's
a
a
good show.
poster of The Wire behind me. You can't see it, but there's a
No, it's a
poster
good
of The
show. I
Wire.
can see the T.
It's at the corner of it. Yeah.
What's the other one? What's the other?
It's from a movie called Rad. It was a BMX movie from 1986. It
Oh,
was one of the movies that made me fall in love with
sounds
action
like a cult
sports.
movie. Yeah, yeah, like a
No,
cult classic.
it's so in that movie it stars Bill Allen, Lori Laughlin, Talia Shire, and Talia Shire produced the movie, and she hated the movie so much she bought it so that it couldn't be released to anyone else. But she just recently, in the last like 2 years, like sold it to a streaming service for people to
Oh, I wanna
watch.
see it.
But
That sounds interesting. That's a really
it's
interesting backstory, actually.
it's
That's a good
basically
backstory.
the movie is about this kid. He's his mom wants him to take the SATs, but he wants to compete in Hell Track, which is a BMX race with a large with a large like cash prize, and you get to compete against the best pros in the world. And in the movie, evil Duke Best, who runs Mongoose Bikes, is trying to prevent him from getting in the race any way he can. And I used to follow this account on Instagram called Real Duke Best, and it was a fake account of the guy pretending to be the guy from the movie, just doing evil things. It's a really really good movie. Everyone should go see it.
I love to discover films like that have, like, a real quirky or interesting backstory. I mean, Talia Shire, I loved her work, obviously, in The Godfather and, Rocky, sister of Coppola, sister of
Yep.
Francis Ford Coppola, and so,
Also,
yeah.
young Lori Laughlin in that movie because
Yeah.
it was in the mid 80s. The other thing that's funny about it is when I look back on it is like the mom's pissed at him because he wants to do this bike race, which is on like the same day that he would take the SATs, and then like after going through hell to qualify, he basically says to his mom, "Was like, look, I'll take the SATs next time," as if that wasn't an option before. Like he was only going to get one chance to ever take
Oh.
the SATs in his life. But it's look there. It's got this great 80s. It's unapologetically cheese
Mhm.
and
As
it's
the
got
'80s were, dude,
yes, and it
the
leans
Rocky
into the
movies.
it's basically it's the cheese sports movie for early action sports, and anybody who sees it, I challenge anyone to go watch that movie and tell me you don't leave feeling in a better mood. Even if it's cheesy, you'll love it.
Rad. I was
Rad.
surprised when I went back and watched Rocky. Was it Rocky 4, the one where he fights the Russian?
Drago. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, Drago. And God, I'm blanking on the guy's name. Who was the guy who played Drago?
It's Oh God,
I
I
know, it's just,
always.
like, on the tip of our tongues, dude. Somebody in the comments,
I'm
tell
failing
us.
right now
I know, we're
because I'm
both
not
failing.
remember.
We
I'm
just both
failing right
failed.
now.
I should have stopped the stream before we got to this point
Yeah.
because now it's a disgrace that neither of us can remember. Oh my
He's
god.
he's
Save
got
us. Someone save us.
he's like
Who
sick right
played
now too.
Drago? Who played Drago? Okay. Someone's
He
gonna
was just in he was just
Dolph
in
Lundgren.
Dolph
Ah.
Lundgren. Yeah. He was also like, look, he's such a good actor, and also an Emma or like he's got like he's like an advanced degree, right, from
Hey,
like.
smart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's super smart. Thank you to whoever saved me on that one.
Let
That
me
was my
tell
fault right
you
there.
let me tell you 2 things. First of all, a Dolph Lundgren, story that you may not know. So several years ago, I got this was not really reported much in the American media. I was trying to find out that iconic photo. There we go. Um, I'm gonna put a photo up. Dolph. So several years ago, Dolph Lundgren's he was away from home, and this was back when he was married. I think he ended up getting a divorce, but he was away from home, and some burglars broke into his house, and this is in the news. They tied up his wife, and they start ransacking the house, and maybe who knows, they were intending to do something to her, hopefully not, or whatever. But here's what happened. Apparently, police said this. Apparently, they did not know whose house they were in, and when they saw that it was Dolph Lundgren's house, they saw a picture of him, there with his wife or whatever, the woman that they had just tied up. And when they saw that, apparently they started freaking out and they got the fuck out of there because they were really freaked out that it was
They
Dolph
don't want
Lundgren.
Drago to take him
They do
out.
not want this dude.
Like just imagine so was he home at the time?
No, he wasn't. So it was just the wife. So
Oh,
it was really traumatic. I'm sure for her. They tie
I
her up, they
bet.
start ransacking the house, and then they see a photo of him with her and realize what they've
You don't
done.
mess with the guy who killed Apollo Creed.
No, no. But what I was gonna say about Rocky, you're talking about Rad and how it was
Yep.
unapologetically cheesy, and that's the thing that I had forgotten about some of those Rocky movies, and particularly Rocky 4, which was like, we're in the prime of the '80s with that, right? Is if you haven't seen it in a while, go back and watch Rocky 4. It is
Yep.
so I mean, I love it. There are
I love
so
all
many
the Rocky
cheesy
movies. I
parts.
love all the Rocky movies. Like, look, I love any movie that gives me a training montage. I love a good
3
training
of them
montage.
in Rocky
Yes,
4.
I
3.
love it. Like, look, there's a reason why Team America World Police made the satire song "We're Gonna Need a Montage." Look, it's a beautiful thing, and I liked Creed. I liked the Creed movies, but they don't have the same level of unapologetic cheese that the Rocky movies do. But also, even the later Rocky movies, which take a more serious tone, Balboa, and the last one,
Mhm,
like
mhm,
Stallone is just so good, right?
mhm.
Stallone just he knows his writing style, he knows his work, he knows how to be a director. If you haven't seen Tulsa King, I do recommend everyone
I've
check
heard
out
that's good,
Tulsa
yeah.
King. It's very good. Like I will watch Stallone in just about anything because he is also that callback. And I think that he kind of he keeps people like people have kind of become disillusioned with Arnie because of
And
his
why is
comments
that?
because
Why
of
is
his
that?
comments during COVID where he said screw your freedoms
Oh,
and
okay,
and
he was
all
really
that
into the
stuff.
mandates.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
like so like a lot of people are disillusioned with Arnie, but Stallone is just one of those guys that just feels like he's America's guy, right? Like he feels
Uh-huh.
he's one of America's action stars from that time period. And I always felt that his movies had a lot of heart, and
Mhm.
we need more of that these days.
Well, Stallone has so much heart. If you know his bio, and this
Yeah.
is interesting as well, he was at one point he was basically homeless. He had to sell his dog or give his dog away because he couldn't even afford to keep the dog. He was basically he was basically this sort of homeless, poverty-stricken guy down
Yep.
on his luck, but he kept trying to break in, and he had written to the industry and he had written the script for Rocky. And just after he gave away his dog, he got the call telling him that they were interested, and from there,
Yep.
I love those stories, right? They're great stories, but
Also, guys, the first two Expendables movies are fantastic. We went and saw Expendables 4, which is awful. It is terrible.
is
But
that
I will tell
recent?
you
Did
it's
that come out
recent. Yeah,
recently?
it came
Oh,
out this
okay.
year. But I will tell
Okay.
you this, those first two Expendables movies hold up unbelievably well. And I mean that the effects in those movies, for as much CGI as there in those films, holds up amazingly well. And you just love to see the unbridled masculinity of those early films, which are just they're hard to find films like that today.
Yep, they are absolutely. So I want to do a couple of things right now. We're entering the second part of the show. We're going to talk for probably another, I don't know, 40, 45 minutes. But two things. First of all, I just put up Brett's channel. So he does the show Pop Culture Crisis with Mary Morgan, and I've been on it before. Going to come on it again. I just found out. So excited about that. It is a great
Yes.
show, and they cover a range of topics. So make sure sometime tonight before you click off this channel, make sure that you have subscribed to him there. And they just had their 500th episode, right?
Yeah, we just we just did episode 500 last week on Tuesday, and then we were out of town for the premiere. It's really funny. We came back and people are like, "Why does everyone sound so tired?" It's because we've been doing nothing but traveling for 2 days. We just had episode 500. We just passed 81,000 subscribers, and on Saturday was the second. That was a 2-year anniversary of the channel, so we just turned 2 years old. As we hit on
Congrats.
on
So
the day
new.
we hit 80,000 subscribers was the day that we turned 2 years old. So the channel is growing. We're more people are coming in to watch. The live streams are a lot of fun. We're live 5 days a week at 3 p.m. Eastern here.
Yeah, very consistent output, and they stay they're there like every day.
Mm.
So other thing here we're going to do is a brief transition. I have decided that I'm going to start a channel just for live streaming, and that's not going to say that I'm not going to have streams on this current channel that we're on, or we're not going to continue at times to come to this channel to talk. But I really do want to experiment, frankly, with having a channel where I have more edgy and more experimental content, because what's kind of, if people are aware of this, I know that most of you know this, what hangs over our heads as YouTube content creators, one of the things that hangs over is kind of like a sword of Damocles, right? um,
Damocles, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
is that any minute YouTube can just arbitrarily, they don't even have to give you warnings or strikes before that. They can just arbitrarily take you off, and they can take you off for, as we know, any number of ridiculous reasons. And so I really, there's a way in which I feel like that's almost creatively been impairing me. So I really want to experiment with starting a second channel. And I know that a lot of people, a lot of other YouTube content creators have started second channels just for live streaming.
Yeah, that's very common.
We were just talking about one earlier. So anyway, long story short, I really want to, for a while, encourage people to go to this new channel and subscribe and start watching my live stream content there. And I really do want to start putting out more content. So Brett and I will continue to do this show every Monday. And then also I'd like to put out one of my own streams once every couple of weeks or so. So this is what we're going to do. It's kind of awkward, it's kind of clunky, but this is the best way that I have found to get people to go to another channel and subscribe. We're going to actually halt this program for 5-10 minutes, and I'm going to ask you to go to the link that is below in the info section beneath this. I'm also going to post it here. Everybody give me 1 second, and you can also get the link. And we're going to take a break and come back at the new channel. And again, that is my effort to there we go. That's my effort to get people to make the switch. And also, I like taking breaks, so we were going to take a break anyway, but here we go. I'm just going to grab the channel. So this is my alternative, my YouTube channel. In the past, here we go. In the past, I have only used this occasionally, but I'm going to rebrand it. Here's the new channel in the comments. I'm going to rebrand it, and I'm going to make it, like I said, a home for edgier content, and at least for now, more of my live streaming. So everybody, you're going to click on that link in the comments. It's also, if you lose it, it's also in the information description section beneath this YouTube video. Okay. And it's called right now, it's called Colonel Kurtz's Contrarian Corner. That's a
I
horrible.
think she should call it Contrarian Kurtz.
Contrarian Kurtz is definitely better than that long tongue twister, but it is Colonel
Yeah.
Kurtz's Contrarian Corner. So if you lose your way, look that up. But we're going to go away now for 10 minutes. And so we'll come back here like at 9. Right now it's 10:10 10:11 Eastern. We'll come back at 10:20 in 10 minutes. So come back at 10:20, the new place. I will, and people who are going to be following, you'll see the link below in the description. Click on it, it says more. You click on it, you see more, and I'll also put it in the comments. All right, we'll see you there, and I'll see you there, Brett.
Okay.
Bye bye. And we're ending the stream.